This is a great time for me to give a shout out to our wonderful prayer practitioners and ministers. I'm so grateful. Reverend Dawn is here. I see miracles happen all the time because our prayer practitioners know that prayers work, and so they've got their own list, email list, and people put out prayers and things happen. So I encourage you to put in a prayer request or join a prayer circle and let that posse know, because they are powerful. They're just like, the posse comes into town and it cleans things up. I mean, the prayer posse is amazing. So please take advantage of their wonderful gifts of knowing that no matter what's going on for you, God is greater than what's going on for you or in you or as you or whatever. So it's a great gift that they give. I'm starting a 5-part series. I hope that if you don't watch, or if you're not here or watch every Sunday, it's always available on YouTube. We have a CSL Seattle YouTube page or channel, whatever they call it. I get on there once in a while. I don't know what they call it, but because my intention is for us to know that we can be lifted above our troubles, and that in return we can lift others. Because there's a whole, I'm addressing this for a lot of reasons, but I just think this is the sort of technology that I want to share with others. And I think and the theme is moving on up, and what I'd love for us to do is everyone have a greater sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. Who wouldn't want some more satisfaction and fulfillment? Now, that doesn't mean a thing unless that thing will give you more satisfaction. A lot of people search for things and notice that didn't satisfy them. To really be satisfied is a great gift. To be satisfied, to feel fulfilled, is actually what Viktor Frankl said we're all going for. That a lot of people look for success and can be successful in some way, shape, or form, like they accomplished this or they accomplished that or they overcame this or they overcame that. And if they're not satisfied, fulfilled, it's not life worthwhile. That's what I would love for us to do, is to move up. Wherever you are on that scale of satisfaction and fulfillment, there is a way to move up and have even more of it. I'm not sure what that would look like for you, but I believe it can not only happen. Here's the deal. I believe it should happen. Should happen. Ooh, I'm going to should all over you. Just should. We don't should on each other. Oh, I do. I do when I want to. Now, why would I say that you should? Because, to use old terminology, it is God's will that you be satisfied and fulfilled. That's old terminology. New terminology, and I'm going to give you new terminology because I got some pushback. I don't believe in God's will. Okay, don't believe in God's will. That's old terminology. That was people that were speaking 2,000 years ago that didn't really have an idea of the universal scheme of things and how that there is a natural law of creation and it works through the human mind just as it works through the divine mind. So what could they say? It's God's will. Then let me give you new terminology for that. The life impulse is to thrive. Life's impulse is who could deny that life's impulse is to thrive? Things try really hard to thrive. Little birds, grass, weeds, blackberries. Rabbits. And because they thrive, coyotes thrive. And because blackberries thrive, goats can thrive. Do you see how everything is balanced? And it is in a beautiful dance of thrival. A dance of thrival. I don't know who said this, but I think it was Oscar Wilde, but I do know the quote is correct. To live is one of the rarest things in the world. Most people just exist. life calls us to thrive, and thriving doesn't mean being bigger, being more important. Thriving doesn't mean acquisition. How many of you have reached the place where you realize that more stuff is just more to dust? And it all seems so important at one time. Thriving is that ability to express ourselves in such a way we are satisfied with what we're expressing. To express ourselves in such a way that we're satisfied and fulfilled with what we're giving out into the world, not just an acquisition. I want to say that we actually in this center have a Thrive committee. We have a lot of committees, and we have a Thrive committee dedicated to creating the consciousness where everyone here can thrive, can do better. Wherever you are, there's no end to better. Don't let good be the enemy of gooder. So, if that is the truth, if the old technology is that it's God's will that you thrive, and the new technology is, or new way of saying it, I should say, is that it is life's impulsion to express and to thrive, and we are life, then I believe that the spiritual teachings throughout millennia have given people information or technology at the level that they could entertain it for thriving. Not for getting someplace later, but for thriving here on earth, to do well on earth. So I'm going to share one of them with you. This is from Mark. This is accredited to Jesus. And when I say accredited, Mark wasn't written until 30 years after Jesus died. So, and I know that a lot of people are illiterate, and even then, quill and ink just doesn't go fast. Now, say that again, Jesus. No. Anybody got any ink? It was accredited to him because it was part of the teachings of the followers of him, and so they solidified it and said Jesus said it, which made it more important, okay? So, but I do believe that this was an important teaching that those people lived, and so they accredited Jesus with saying, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it shall be yours. That's like praying from the end. That's part of our technology when we teach scientific prayer, is we acknowledge God, we know that God is not separate from us, and then we in our own mind create the experience of having. That's what it's teaching. And my thought to sleep on tonight is about this, because it's hard. It's hard. See, and I'm going to talk, so you don't have to answer the 8 o'clock call now. But this is what I was saying. It's like, wow, that sounds great. But our consciousness is always out picturing outside of ourselves. And so we can imagine that we are receiving something, that we have something, but we have all these other thoughts about why it can't possibly happen. There's this thought about why it can't happen, and that thought about why it can't happen. And all of those thoughts are like viruses that shut down the operating system of your mind and the clean operation of spirit through you. And it gets bogged and slow and doesn't seem to outpicture very quickly. I'm not going to get into that too much because that's a whole nother study. Actually, I'm really grateful that the first 3 principles of our teaching are taught in a free class every month by Reverend Kavika. It happens today. You can take that class, sign up at the registration table, and I don't have to go through this process. But this process does work until it doesn't. I want to talk about the times when it doesn't work, when it's beyond us. Because what can happen is we can see that things aren't working, and we can change a thought and change a thought and change a thought and change a thought and work a thought and work a thought and work a thought. And all we do is find ourselves continually trying to create a satisfying, fulfilling outcome, and it just doesn't happen. How many have experienced that? I'm here for your salvation, brothers and sisters. Sheesh. There are times, it's so what's in us. There are times I can think a thought and it almost happens immediately because there's no thoughts within me that would keep it from happening. For instance, when I was first introduced to this particular teaching, I could think a thought about prosperity and prosperity would happen. Prosperity for me is not an issue. I don't have problems with it because we were so poor, anything was up. So it's like, it was easy. I'm just so grateful for everything that gratitude drew money to me. Relationships, on the other hand, not so easy. Thus, the 5 marriages. And other things in between. Thank you for understanding. I was actually sharing with a friend today that we went to high school together, and I was on Facebook, and I said, I was just talking about 4 failed marriages before I got it right. And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, No, it's just like trying on clothes. It wasn't bad until you got something that fits. So don't feel sorry for me. It's just that I couldn't get it right. Oh, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. Oh, this works. So it's almost like I couldn't think myself into it. I actually had to stop thinking, which is the technology I want to share today. Because in the Old Testament it says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways." So we can even take on the responsibility of figuring everything out, and maybe there's something that could figure things out through us, around us, as us, better than us. So today I want to talk about that. About finally stop trying to make it happen. Because it is God's will that you are satisfied and fulfilled. And it is life's impulse through you that wants to thrive. And it only thrives if you're doing well. Life thrives when you do well. And life knows how to do well through you. I don't know how many other ways to say it. Or let's put it this way, the inevitable wants to giggle as you enjoy and delight. So here's a spiritual hack. And the spiritual hack is just so darned easy. It eludes people. It eludes me at times, even though I know the hack. And even though I know others know the hack, we will get mired in trying to figure it out. Because the ego and the brain has developed in such a way that we have become problem solvers instead of solution acceptors. We solve problems instead of allow a solution to show up. Because the ego says, well, then what's my job? I mean, how many of you know that it's really hard to give up an issue because you're working it? It's almost like the universe says, "Excuse, I have a solution. Leave me alone. I'm not done. I got this." Rubik's Cube of life. So, here is the spiritual hack. Just look up. Just look up. So that higher thoughts than our thoughts ego's thoughts, personality thoughts. Ego sometimes gets a bad rap. Ego's not a bad rap. It's like New Thought people have replaced the devil and Satan with ego. They have to make something bad. Well, it's my ego. No, your ego is just a set of problem-solving interplays within your brain. It's not bad. It's doing the best it can to keep you safe and to keep you comfortable. But therefore, don't think outside the box, because the ego is at least comfortable with the box. And I know this sounds like a platitude, but if I was with you, I would, within 15 minutes, we would know what your box was. I would try to get you outside your box, and you'd be like, blah, blah, blah. Don't know if I want to go outside the box. I'm thinking about ancient civilizations. We went to Egypt. Some of you have gone to Egypt. I'm going to go to Peru pretty soon. And what they did is just outside the norm. Outside the norm for our civilization, and truly outside the norm for their civilization. Without tools like jackhammers or cranes, how did they make the stone so large and so smooth and so accurate? And how did the Peruvian, well, they call them the Incas, yeah, maybe. How did they put those stones together in such a way that they're like puzzle pieces and you can't get anything through them? Maybe they were listening to an intelligence that we're not even listening to, because the scientists that we have now can't figure out how they did it. They were obviously thinking thoughts that our scientists aren't thinking, because our scientists are still trying to figure it out. They're problem solving where maybe those people were just inspired. Just inspired. And the inspiration's still there. When I say look up, I mean it in two ways. Metaphorically, like look to something greater than yourself. Look to the ineffable. There's a little book by Emmett Fox, and it's called The Golden Key, and all it is whenever you have an issue, stop looking at the issue and look to God. I mean, it could be very metaphorical. It's also literal. Literal. And we're going to have an experience of that today. But first, I have to tell you a story, because hopefully for each and every one of you, I hope that you will come across an issue in your life that you cannot pray away. I hope you come across something that is so freaking good, but so freaking hard, that you can't use any metaphysical means to solve it. That it's so big that all of your resources and all of your training, it's almost like all of the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. I hope that's your issue. Why? Because then you have to just give up and turn to the inevitable. Because my thoughts aren't working and my ways aren't working. And God says, yeah, guess what? I got solutions. Well, God doesn't say that. It does, though. So this is the story. In 2015, some of you may know, and some of you don't know because you're new here, we owned a piece of property, 4 acres on Sandpoint Way. And we also had a huge loan. We had borrowed $7 million to complete a sanctuary. And we had paid off $3 million, and we had really a huge loan payment every month. I think principal and interest came up to $60,000 a month. And so the attention, at least my attention in the Board of Trustees and a lot of the staff is making that payment every month. And Karen Schiller, God bless her, she had gotten out of debt, big debt. If she ever teaches her get out of debt class again, I suggest you take her get out of debt class, because that woman was really in debt and got out of debt. And so she's on the board of trustees, and she said, we should just be debt-free. Well, that's an interesting idea. And we all said, yeah, that's a good idea. You know how you kind of like can give lip service to a good idea? Now listen, we thought it would be great to get out of debt, but what we had in our mind, and at least in my mind, was we got debt. Oh yeah, we're out of debt. In God's name, we're out of debt. I got debt. So when the balloon came about, U.S. Bank decided to not renew our balloon payment, which meant that we had $3 million we needed to pay, no, $4 million we needed to pay immediately. Like, well, in 8 months, they gave us 8 months. We had $1.5 million in the bank. $1.5 million in the bank. And we'd never missed a payment, but they were pulling the loan. So I did what I thought I should do and what I'm really good at, which is manifesting money. We had one woman offer to give us $1 million. We had another woman offer to loan us $500,000. And there was but it never met $4 million. It was like money here, money there, money here, money there, but not the number we needed. And I'm like, what? So I've prayed. I've accepted money. I mean, they were going to give us the money if we could pay off the loan. We don't just take that money. It's like, we'll give you this. We'll give you that. This. I went and asked our people I know had millions laying around. I know they had millions. I know they had millions laying around, and they both said. They said no. I did my best. I've worked it. I think we're like, 4 months out from being repossessed. And the loan document said that not only would they take the property, but all of our assets, which means the $1.5 million in the bank too. Anyway, God bless them. And I do really mean God bless their little hearts. Anyway, for those of you from the South. Anyway, nothing worked. We put the property up for sale. It had a deed restriction on it, which meant that we couldn't sell it for as much money as we could have if it didn't have the deed restriction. It was valued at $8 million. Nothing was working, and I just kept looking up. After this, it's like I've tried everything. I just looked up. Every morning I would just look up. And I became so peaceful. No ideas, nothing happening. It's still going downhill, and I'm just peaceful. Now this is so important, because the mind can say, look, nothing's happening. But when you reach a state of peace, that's where God can work. God can't work through your anxiety, your worry, your fuss, your ain't it awful, what are we going to do? Let's have a plan. God doesn't work in that consciousness. And so there was just this peace. If we dissolve, we dissolve. God's work's not going to stop. If it doesn't need this avenue of expression, it doesn't need this avenue of expression. This is God's church. It can either maintain this church or dissolve the church. What do I care? I'll continue to do God's work. I may do it on my front lawn. I don't care. And then I called Jan Simon. I said, have the realtors get back to Children's Hospital. And within a few days, we went back and forth, and Children's Hospital offered us more money than the property it was valued at. And we actually closed like 2 weeks before the balloon payment. And we got to sell it to Children's Hospital, who had been looking for property in that area for years. God's win-win was beautiful. God's win-win was beautiful. And we get to be here, and it is smaller, but it's paid for. And the upgrades, and we're not even done with the upgrades, by the way. You've heard of the issues with supply chain. There's more happening. We will hopefully air conditioning by summer, since have been in the pipeline for a long time for air conditioning. But anyway, all sorts of things will be different. But we pay cash, and we're not in debt. God's idea was bigger than my idea. My idea was for us to just pay it off, but the maintenance and just keeping that thing running was huge, where we don't have that here. God's idea is so much bigger than my idea, so much bigger. So I want to give you an opportunity to play around with that. So, how many of you have something that is heavy on your heart? And it may not be a big issue, it's just heavy on your heart. It could be personal, it could be planetary, it could be social, it could be political. And now, who has something that's heavy on their heart? All right, so have that heavy on your heart and just sit with that and look right about here. Keep your eyes. Because remember I said that looking to God was literal, metaphorical and literal. So look about right here. Horizon. And just notice how that issue, keep the issue with you, and notice how it is in your heart. Does it still weigh on your heart? Notice that you're probably thinking of the issue and thinking of, maybe I could do this. This is where the mind, it's like, here's the issue, but I could do that. Well, I probably can't. Well, I've tried that. And you're still thinking about it. You're still in the realm, when you look straight, you're still in the realm of, how am I supposed to think? Now, look to the top of the mountain. Because in the Old Testament it says, look into the hills. From whence comest thou salvation? Not the salvation of your soul, but to save you from your own issue. To save you from your own stinking thinking. To save you from you thinking that you can solve a problem that's so much bigger than you. So just look to the mountain and notice where your heart is and how your heart is. Has your heart felt lighter now? Does your heart feel lighter? Keep your eyes open, Jeffrey. It doesn't work if you close your eyes. It just doesn't. I don't know why. Is there a difference? Can you tell the difference? If you can tell the difference, raise your hand. Now, for some of you, you'll stop thinking, which is good. You can always come back down to earth and have that issue, but for a while, just rest. And what I'm going to call the grace of God, the love intelligence of the universe, giving itself to you through your thinking capabilities. And know that there is something universal saying to you, my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. But you can be lifted into these thoughts. And by being lifted into these thoughts, it's like rising to the top of the mountain and seeing that the issue has already been solved. remember that it's not just what we think that creates our life, but how we feel. And what I know is that when I look up, I just feel better. And so I speak my word that the Spirit of truth, the Spirit of revelation, is lifting everyone within this room so that they may be lifted above the problem and the issue to a realization that God is at work in them, as them, and through them. Because it is God's good pleasure to give them a life of satisfaction and fulfillment. So let's make that an affirmation. I'll say the first part and then you repeat after me. It is God's good pleasure to give me a life of satisfaction and fulfillment. And I am led and guided in accepting that. And so it is.
There is just one mind. That mind is God's mind. That mind is perfect. That mind is my mind now, right now. There is just one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now, right now, right now. Infinite Spirit, ever flowing, ever within me, ever growing, infinite wisdom, heaven knows the way. There is just one love. That love is God's love. That love is perfect. That love is my love now, right now. There is just one heart. That heart is God's heart. That heart is perfect. That heart is my heart now, right now, right now. Infinite Spirit, ever flowing, ever within me, ever growing, infinite wisdom, ever shows the way. There is just one mind. That mind is God's mind. That mind is perfect. That mind is my mind now, right now. There is just one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now, right now, right now. Infinite Spirit, ever flowing, ever within me, ever growing, infinite wisdom, ever shows the way. There is just one Spirit ever flowing, mind is ever within me, ever growing, infinite wisdom, ever shows the way. There is just infinite Spirit ever flowing, that mind is ever within me, ever growing, infinite wisdom.